Well, after The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, succeeding only in becoming what is largely agreed upon as one of the worst movies ever made. Sometime later, I think about 1990s, when Exorcist 3 was released. And, it's probably best to just, if you have to have a sequel to The Exorcist, to just forget that Exorcist 2 happened at all and just jump to this one, which certainly just aesthetically is much better shot and not on par with the original, but pretty close. And there's some excellent framing material here, most famously as what has been seen as one of the early jump scares. There's always a jump scare in horror movies, but in this one in particular, especially since there's this very quiet build-up to it, and it just the whole framing device of the hospital hallway and what you see going on, and it very, very quiet, and yet you're getting ready for something, and then blam, there it is, and it's gone. And I've seen where this image of the killer in that scene becomes a meme and chasing people and all that. But it's pretty funny. But basically, it continues on the narratives of the characters that you briefly met in the original film. Once again, they were dogged by being unable to have the original actors reprise their roles. So George C. Scott takes on the character of the detective that J. Lee Cobb had played in the original, and unfortunately he had passed away since then. And so, but George C. Scott's a good choice to take it, and is sort of grizzled, grumbling old detective. But had developed this friendship with the other priest that played by Ed Flanders, who bears no resemblance whatsoever to, and I'm forgetting the name of the priest, but the deal is that they do recall what happened, and of course the detective walked in on the ultimate outcome of where Father Karras sacrificed himself to save Reagan from the demon. And he'd seen enough to realize this was far beyond anything he had experienced before, because obviously the way the movie, it's obvious that the demon possessing Reagan killed the drunken film director, throwing him out of the window, and he went down those stairs. That's ultimately the same fate that Father Karras suffered. And so he's aware of that, and so for him to go through this experience is not that much of a stretch for him to realize what's happening. But at first, that's not the case. They believe that there's a copycat killer for this serial killer called the Gemini Killer, who would decapitate people. So there's a series of murders here of people. There was a young boy gets killed, a priest in the confessional gets killed, and all this stuff. And it's so George C. Scott is investigating this, and then his friend, the priest, who was supposed to be the same character as the priest who was, a close confidant of Father Karras in the original movie. And spoiler, and I'm going to spoil a lot. He gets killed. And so the rest of the movie is primarily for a lockdown of the hospital for the detective to try to figure out who did it. And it becomes rather obvious, but it seems impossible. How could this guy have done it? He's stuck in a psych ward cell in a straitjacket the whole time. But then out of the shadows, hey, look, it's Father Karras. And I just think that's impossible. And so the idea is this is where, when you have, whether it's science fiction or supernatural horror or this sort of thing, where your ultimate villain is so powerful. It's how do you defeat them? And unless there's some, other than, well, the will and the faith and so on is what overcame him. And all right, but I just, it's like the priest in the end who's able to exorcise. A lot of people say there's no exorcism here, and not in the sense of the original film, no doubt, and then it's a bit of the second one is just such a mess. But technically speaking, the priest is attempting it. He gets mutilated by the demon, and this demon is demonstrating far more serious powers overall than in the original film. And it becomes that Father Karras, the demon, willed to survive. No one knew what became of him. And then after the actual Gemini killer was executed, the demon Pazuzu snatched the spirit of the serial killer and put him in Father Karras' body, who I guess was supernaturally healed to survive the injuries he would have suffered that would certainly be fatal from the fall. But nevertheless, that's the setup. So you have this other actor, the only one they had to return from the original movie, and to further torment him. And so the Gemini killer is living on, killing people with his giant shears, which sorry, you only get a brief glimpse of it, that he uses to chop off heads and all this stuff. And of course, the way he's able to achieve these murders would require some supernatural help here, which he has. But it's also that I guess the sense is that it would be easier to overtake Karras at that point, which he was already possessed at the end of the movie. But it's just the force of the demon to keep him alive. You'd have to conclude that. But also the demon was able to take control of the other patients in the hospital. There's these elderly people, probably all suffering from some forms of dementia, whether it was Alzheimer's or what have you, and was using them to commit the murders and that sort of thing. So you had multiple people, and so you had the jump scare there, and it's a well-framed scene and all that. There's other things of George C. Scott. He's observing the hospital, looking around, and hoping to find some kind of clue as to who the killer could be and all that. And then the demon has possessed some old lady, and she's crawling on the ceiling like Spider-Man. George C. Scott doesn't see her because, he's not going to look to the ceiling and say, hey, maybe the killer it's got spider powers. It's a funny looking scene, but at the same time, it's of course all horrific. She later disguises herself as a nurse, does attack his family, goes to his home, nearly decapitates his daughter, all of this stuff. And this was more of what was going on, and leading to this isn't just some killer, this is the supernatural force and all that. But ultimately, the confrontation is actually an attempt at an exorcism, but again, the priest was badly attacked and mutilated and all this stuff. George C. Scott comes in, he gets sent to the ceiling, being tormented by the demon, and all kind of visuals of snakes coming out of the ground and all this, and flames and what have you. And then there's a scene of George C. Scott is, I believe in filth, I believe in pain, I believe in stink, I believe in paper cuts, I believe in unflushed toilets. And then ultimately the priest is able to make some recovery and get the upper hand on the demon, and that is enough to take him down. It seemed unlikely It's, why couldn't the priest have handled him at the outset, you know? But ultimately, it's kind of a repeat of what happened at the end. Of Father Karras, the brief moment where he regains control and tells the officer that George C. Scott to shoot him, and which he does, and that ends him there. So, but by the power demonstrated, I mean, couldn't the demon just reanimate his corpse? You know, I guess, well, there's rules, and you can't do it like that. I don't know. So, overall, it's a demonstration there. So you just have to go that the priest, his faith was stronger at the last minute there, and he gave a window for the detective to, kill, the host for the demon, which was Father Karras in there, and all that. And that's what you have to go with. A lot of the elements, the creepiness of it is well done, and leaps and bounds superior to the second movie, again, in the aesthetics of it all, and well-framed shots and that sort of thing. Wasn't all that impressed with the finale of, the snakes and stuff like that, but, it's... And apparently there was another cut. I don't know if that's available completely or if it's just deleted scenes and what. I've only seen the actual theatrical cut. And a lot of people said it was better. The actor said it was better, and that sort of thing, and that was a much more simplified ending. But I don't know. I guess they wanted something more spectacular or what have you. But a problem with it is it somewhat undercuts the heroism of Father Karras at the end of the original movie. Now, granted, him taking his own life, and that is obviously a sin in Catholicism and whatnot. But I think you can argue for an exemption in the case of what's happening there. He ultimately cannot get the demon out of this poor girl. The actual exorcist that Saito was playing had died of a heart attack on the floor, and he's at his wit's end, and so he invites the demon to take him over. And so you see him, he has the makeup on and the glowing eyes and all that, and he's looking down at the girl crying on the floor, and then he has this horrific reaction on his face, and for a moment he's in control again, and he says, "Oh my God," and he throws himself out the window. It doesn't take much to fill in the blanks of what the demon was about to make him do to that girl, and it horrified him so much that he saw no other option. He had to stop the demon, which he did. But now it's like, no, he didn't. And the demon got the upper hand and torments him for years, after this, which he clearly did not deserve, because he sacrificed himself in order to save this innocent girl, which makes him, the hero of the movie. Whereas here, I don't know, the demon was so pissed at him for pulling that stunt, it decided, you know what? Mess with you, for nearly 30 years, or 20 years or what have you. So, yeah, I go back to, there's only one Exorcist movie. Even though in this, Blatty wrote, and I don't know, there is a book, it was Exorcist Legion, or maybe just Legion, I can't remember. And that was an expansion on the definition of legion, which refers to the biblical story of when Jesus exorcised a demon from this guy who was, going nuts with the demon in control. And Jesus asks, "Who is he?" And he says, "Our name is Legion, for we are many," or something like that, because it was multiple demons, not just one. But in this case, it's well, I suppose you count the Gemini spirit being another demon, if you will. but also the demon is controlling multiple people. So, you know, there was, you know, and all that sort of thing. So it's kind of a, you know, a nod to that. As for the overall take on it in the book, perhaps it is better, but here again, it's, and maybe the other cut it adds to this, but, you know, Blatty was the director, you know, he apparently Friedkin was interested in one time to doing it, but you know, those two kept being at odds here and there. But he did like the book, and John Carpenter was approached to do it, but he had different ideas and they couldn't come to an agreement on it and all that. So ultimately, Blatty did it, and there you go. But again, if you really have to have a sequel to Exorcist, then this is the better one of the two by far. But I got my own problems with it. But for, you know, it's a, you know, a scary movie, so you get that, and that's what you get there. As for the other films, I really don't have any interest in them. The only one is the kind of prequel thing, but I don't know, after sitting through Exorcist 2 again, I just don't know that I care to visit that. So I'm done at this point for Exorcist films. And ultimately I left with the same conclusion, that there's really only one, and that's the first one. So there you go. Exorcist 3.